Hi, I'm Mark Nyman from the RBL Group. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about some key steps in operationalizing capabilities. How do you take organizational capabilities and translate those into something that you can measure and something that's really useful for the organization? We find significant power and impact from using organizational capabilities when they're done well. We also see a lot of cases where people really like the concept and see the power it could have, but they don't follow some real basic and kind of simple steps that can be used to make the capabilities really have impact in the organization. I'm going to cover just 3 basic steps that we find that if you'll do all 3 of those, that the impact and value you can get from organizational capabilities and what you can really create when you try and operationalize those, the impact can go up significantly. The first one is pretty straightforward, and it's one that, as simple as it sounds though, it often gets missed. And that is that the capabilities really need to be tied into the strategy of the business. Part of what's key with any kind of initiative or any kind of change effort is you have to be able to get traction in the organization, and you've got to get people to have momentum and excitement and have them get passion behind what you're trying to do. If the capabilities can't be tied, if there's not a good story of how the capabilities are really helping you really focus the business and how the capabilities are helping you really implement what's critical from a strategic standpoint, it's really hard for people to get behind those capabilities. In fact, it often feels like just extra work if you don't do that. So step one is make sure those capabilities are tied well into the strategy of the business. The second step is how do you make sure that you've actually got a vision of what success will look like with those capabilities? At RBL, we talk all the time about this principle and this concept of outside in. And very simply, all that means is all the work that we do, the improvement efforts that we go through, they should all be tied to a recognition of what impact is that going to have in terms of how it affects the customer. What is the real value that's derived external to the company from being able to kind of implement that capability? Once you've done that, you can really then create a vision for what success looks like with that capability. And it helps get momentum behind it. It also helps really create focus in the organization. Part of what we find in many organizations, there are so many initiatives, so many different activities going on that are even separate from day-to-day work, that people get burned out with those. If you do a good job in tying the capabilities to the strategy, and do a good job in understanding from an outside-in perspective what your vision is of what success looks like, it actually can help you narrow down the initiatives and the activities going on in the organization so that people can really get behind those. The third step, and a step that we find that often gets left off, is you've got to be able to translate the capabilities into day-to-day work. How does implementing the capability actually change how day-to-day work will get done? Once you figure that out, you may have to redesign a work process, you may have to change who does what work, it may change who gets involved in what part of a work process, but until you've actually translated the capability into how it impacts and changes how day-to-day work gets done, it's very difficult to come up with meaningful measures. But once you've done that, meaningful measures and operationalizing the capabilities become very straightforward. On one occasion, we worked with a client who had been really focused from a technology standpoint and really been quite successful. The market had changed, and they decided that one of the things they really had to do shift-wise was focus on this whole idea of capability behind customer service and customer intimacy. So they ended up looking at what would change in their business, in their work process, if they actually pursued a customer service capability. It was fascinating to watch the transformation. They ended up redesigning almost all of the processes that took place in how they interacted with the customer. And in fact, ultimately what they ended up changing was moving from an individual sales model to a team sales model. It happened to fit the capability, it fit the changes that were going on in the industry, and it had dramatic impact in the success of the business. Until they had taken that step in translating it into the day-to-day work, getting to the point where they could measure the capability was almost impossible. It was certainly very difficult. So again, there's three main steps to take that we think of when you're really trying to operationalize capabilities and measure those capabilities. The first is you've got to tie it to strategy. The second one is you've got to have a vision of what success looks like. And again, we talk about all the time this idea of outside in, which is a key to making that vision really concrete and making sure the vision is adding value. And the third is being able to translate that into day-to-day work and make sure you understand how implementing that capability will actually change the way day-to-day work gets done. In our experience, if you do those three things, you will see significant impact from implementing the capability. If you don't do those three things, you run the risk of actually confusing activity with accomplishment. And at the end of the day, when that's happened, it becomes very difficult to get any momentum in the organization in making the capabilities work.